This is question time. This is live, and we will be answering every question you have so that you know how to set yourself up for the future. So what are the major themes that we're going to run through this week? John McGrath, legend. I was lucky enough to work under him, or under people that were under him a long time ago, probably 2 decades ago. We're going to see what his views are as to where the market's going. Tax time, one of our favourite times of the year. You hear us talk a lot about non-cash deductions. We're going to talk through those. House prices. It seems like this year we're constantly setting new records, either the fastest growth in a month. Now we're saying this is the fastest growth in a quarter in the last decade. So plenty of stats to talk about there. First home buyers versus investors. Guess what? It's back. The age-old battle of the investors perhaps buying their second or third property or fourth property versus those first home buyers going head-to-head. It's starting again, and buying power. Really interesting insight here. We all know, you've been seeing the stats at the auctions. Sydney house prices are going totally bonkers. Really interesting to have a look as to how they compare to the rest of the country. And we'll have a look at some of those figures. So I will run through this as quick as I can to get as much question time as you guys have got. As always, let's have a look at last weekend's auction results. Another great sort of result, albeit it's almost feeling, I said that with a little bit of hesitation because we've been hitting 80s. This is the first time that Sydney in the last few weeks, or at least the last couple of months, has been below 80%. Having said that, the final auction clearance rates in Sydney for this entire year, almost 6 months of the year, has never been below 75%. That's a great result. I think we're not going to see this kind of strength go on forever, but I think it's really pleasing to see, particularly since, we're getting a lot of feedback from people about how high those prices are, but it's not showing, coming in the stats. People are still continuing to go and go and go. Melbourne's done well, bounced back. This was obviously the first weekend back we were allowed to do live auctions. Or should I say on-site auctions full stop, however you want to look at it. Being the Queen's birthday weekend, I think that impacted. You can see with the numbers here, there was no Super Saturdays anywhere, and Melbourne was very light on. To be expected, but I think that will just start to crank back in as we get going again. As I said, we are back into our office. All right, let's have a look at the realestate.com. So these are what we always talk about as a leading indicator. These are just insights as to what we can think or may expect to see coming over the next week, month, couple of months, quarter, whatever it may be, from realestate.com for the activity that they see on their website. So drilling into the Australia-wide stats, you can see it's been pretty flat, I guess, over the last month. Now, this is again just an indication as to what realestate.com see on their website and how they believe people are tracking in terms of how focused and dedicated are they to buying that property. I think, again, it's still significantly up from last year, which is somewhat irrelevant given the coronavirus, but you can see that long-term trend. We're up. I think the biggest highlight we've been talking about for the last 6 months is the spread between the red line, which is apartments, and the blue line, which is freestanding houses. So obviously, this is what we typically expect to see happen as we hit those record house prices. As much as people may want to buy a freestanding house, everybody has a ceiling as to what they can afford. And all of a sudden they realise, hang on a second, I've compromised, to now I'm not even getting anything that I want and I'm paying way over my budget. They think about an apartment again, they drop back down and they can almost halve what they're spending to get like for like, and start working their way up and realise that, as we always say, particularly for a starter home or, it could be your second or third home, an apartment is a fantastic option. So that's probably the biggest theme that we've been seeing all year, and I think is going to continue to trend through for, the next 6 months, 12 months, probably 18 months, is we're going to start to see that underlying demand and strength in apartments get stronger and stronger. Let's have a look here at the Victoria stats. So Victoria, again, tracking relatively similar to the whole country. We've obviously seen a little bit of a dip, as we said, with that, 2-week lockdown that we've had. Perhaps not as big a gap between apartments and houses, but I think that's to be expected. Obviously, Sydney is driving those national numbers as it's significantly further ahead in terms of where its positioning is on the cycle. I think over the next 6 months, we'll see that gap widen again in Victoria. That's really, we're starting behind the 8 ball, probably 6 months behind the rest of the country. All right, let's go on to a rental. We see the exact same thing here again from realestate.com. If I drill in, demand has gone up, I think about 10% on where it was. Sorry, it's actually down about 10% as to where it was this time last year, which is interesting. I think the whole country was coming out of the first lockdown for the entire country at this point. Not really sure how to read much in here, because those of you that have been listening for a long time will know that there's this current imbalance at the moment that we've got a big chunk of the rental market in terms of the demand, the students, migration, as well as particularly in the inner city areas, a lot of those casual workers that have been working in hospitality that lost their jobs and perhaps went back to live with mum and dad, or change career or whatever it is that they've done, and slowly just starting to come back in. So hard to read into this. If we look through to Victoria, following a similar level, it's obviously seen a fairly significant spike in the last week, and I think that's again just a reaction to people thinking, oh no, not again, not another lockdown, not another 3 months stuck at home in the same tiny place. I think that nothing much will come from that, but rental market, if you're prepared to work hard and meet the market, I think is still pretty strong today, and we're going to see it go from strength to strength. Okay, this is my question to all of you on the line today. I got the question, what's more important? Is it information or knowledge? So hopefully most of you are repeat people and you'll know the answer. This is really going out to every single one of you that this is your first time, or even if it is your second time and you fell asleep or you weren't paying attention. What is more important, information or knowledge? All right, so the answer is knowledge. If I unpack that for a minute, so information is organised data about something. Knowledge, on the other hand, is an understanding either through education or experience. So, it's very much that knowledge is about being able to take that information, that organised data, understand it, work out what it means for you, and that is knowledge in itself. Now, the important thing, and what we talk to people about all the time, is creating your own database of actionable knowledge. So, that's taking it one step further. You've got that information, you've created it into knowledge, and you've actually worked out what are the actions that you should be taking based on that information and that knowledge, and when should you be taking that. So, it's very much creating that balance and that framework so that when you see this information changing or you're looking for those triggers, that means you should be doing something. That's very much what today's session is all about, is to empower you with the ability to understand that key concept and learning, and actually go out there and take that action yourself. Of course, if that is too hard or you would like some help, that's what we're here for. You can tune in every single week here, or we'd love to catch up one-on-one with you and see how we might help you further your journey. If that does sound like something you're interested in, then hang around to the end, and I've got a very, very exciting offer to put out there to all of our listeners today. All right, if you didn't catch at the start, my name is James Maitland. I'm the General Manager here at Salvo. I'm hosting today's session, obviously. Joined on the panel today, we've got Greg Arbeck, Jack Gian, and Lucas Karras. These guys will be answering all of your questions. I'll be moderating them. Put all your questions, get in the Q&A, or if you're feeling brave, we haven't had anyone brave for a number of weeks, put your hand up and we will unmute you and you can actually ask your question live on here. I apologise, it looks like I've left my phone on. So I will just ask the first question before I put that onto mute. Perhaps John McGrath, legend in the Sydney and the national housing market, he's put some views out as to where he sees the current market and where things are going. And I think, it'd be good to get an overview of that. And perhaps those of you that are on the line now, fire in more questions about that topic.
Well, John, I actually worked for our McGrath office in Sydney before I came to Melbourne, James, funny enough, in
There you
Leichhardt.
go, we both cut our teeth. I was in the original branch in Edgecliff on New South Head Road. So, yeah, good times.
Norton Street Leichhardt. Anyway, so look, he's very well sort of respected when it comes to real estate. And he sort of wanted to touch on, the market that we're experiencing now is quite, crazy, if you want to call it, that the prices are going up at a rate that not many of us have seen for a long time. And he's sort of saying that there's a number of things that are happening right now. He says, like people are still looking around because now they're considering with the lockdowns if they have to work from home. So they move to a place that's more suitable. Other people are considering the lifestyle because, with lockdowns and everything, they want to have everything close by. Other people, owner-occupiers, want to take advantage of the low interest rates to borrow more money to upsize. Then you got the first-home buyers. They've also taken advantage of the low interest rates and the government incentives. And of course, as we recently seen, the investors are all now coming in droves, once again, taking advantage of the low interest rates as well as the stamp duty savings if we're speaking for Victoria.
So Lucas, I can see a question here from Benjamin's just sort of asking, okay, but, is this going to continue on indefinitely or is it going to slow? What's the view there? Or at least what's John's view? And then maybe you can give us your view as well.
John's view is that at some stage next year, maybe towards the middle of next year, things could slow down. I mean, we really got to sort of unpack it, as you say, James. And the APRA boss stuck to the line that the prudential regulator's job is to safeguard financial stability and not to keep the lid on house prices. And currently, we don't have any evidence at present that the banks are loosening their credit standards, which could jeopardize overall financial stability. So the only people, all the banks are sort of waiting for APRA to step in, and APRA says, no, guys, that's not my job. So, and then when you look at the figures...
And they're actually, by the very definition, saying that the major banks are doing a good job at maintaining prudent lending standards.
Exactly. Look, and just to touch a few, like a few figures. So if I may, look, we saw in May, national home prices were up 2.2%, and in capital cities, 9.4% for the year. And now with figures that were released last week, housing lending jumped by 3.7%, which is a monthly record. And this is new loans, not refinancing. So, I mean, all the indicators are showing that there's no slowing down right now.
Okay, good. So we touched on there, and I've seen a few questions coming in. Investors are sort of coming back into the market. We talked about financing and so forth. What's happening on the ground? Has anyone got a view as to, is it just talk about investors? Are they actually sort of back out there? Are first home buyers still the major force? What are we actually seeing out there on the ground?
It's very simple, James. I think we're talking about the investor last week and also the week before, and we obviously saying the investor is already back to the market. And for example, in the April, the investor loan and across Australia increased by 2.1%, which reaching the 4 years record is $8.05 billion. I think that figure we gave me out before. And obviously, the first home buyer was originally, like in the very beginning, is very active on the market. Now, joined by the investor, is creative, like sort of the competition on the market, which fill up the price go up further higher.
Okay. So, I think definitely we spoke about it a lot, probably, 12 months ago, 9 months ago, even up to 6 months ago, that, generally there was a lot of carnage out there in the rental market, in particular in the inner city areas. As much as we would like to sugarcoat it, that was just reality. Corona just tore through those people's lives and jobs that rented most of those. And so, it was definitely very hard to get excited about being a new investor or, buying another investment property when the government rules were so one-sided and focused on the tenants that they could do as they pleased and have no further recourse. Those are now a distant memory. I think, it's been a good couple of months, definitely here in Victoria. Some of the other states, it's been a long, long time since they've disappeared. And the property market is showing its resilience. As we always say, the golden rule of real estate is location, location, location. The second rule is location, location, location. And the third rule is don't forget rule number 1 or 2. So we know that with a good location, there'll be speed humps along the road, but definitely come back stronger and stronger. So I think, Jack, that's definitely why you're seeing out there, I think, on a personal level as well, you've got more and more people now inquiring and you're showing through. And I think you sold a couple of properties just last week to, first-time investors as well.
Yes. I think the investor, they always look in the potential of the capital growth with a location, golden rules. They saw the potential is anytime if you got this location and you have a big potential of capital growth.
All right. So, of course, rental income is great. Capital growth is even better. But if you are thinking about it being an investor, there's a number of other key things you should think about. It's very much, sort of fodder for everyone around this time of the year. 30 June, it would appear that no one thinks about income tax for 366 days a year. And then all of a sudden they wind back the last 5 days of every financial year, being where we are right now, and start talking about tax and saying, I should do all of my planning there. So, we talk about this a lot, but perhaps it'd be useful if someone's got an overview, and then I might have a look through some of the questions that come up about your questions about tax time and investing in property. What are some of the key considerations people should be thinking about? And what are some of the forgotten, benefits of being an property investor from an income tax point of view?
James, a lot of people remember the glaring ones, like the interest on their mortgages. So if you're an investor, you're getting those deductions. Some of them even forget about body corporate fees, and I mean those are actually deductible. So some guys get all excited about it, but that's actually a deductible. But one of the things most people forget about is depreciation, and that's actually when you look at the chart of where it sits on in terms of what you can get as a return, it's second highest to interest on your loan. So it's actually a very important part of any investor that you can actually, and it's a non-cash thing. It's literally getting money for free off the depreciating of your assets. A very, very good thing to look at.
Okay, so good question. I saw come up from Grant just while you were talking about, and I think he jumped on before. Grant's asked, what do you mean by non-cash? Greg, do you want to have a crack at that, or you want me to have a go at it?
Absolutely.
Since I've got my chartered accountant degree on the wall.
Usually, when you got to do your tax return, you can claim back stuff that you've spent money on. So if you've expended $10, you can get that $10 off. Whereas depreciation, you don't have to spend anything. So it's a very good thing to look at, because you can depreciate the assets in the apartment without having to actually spend any money to get that tax deduction.
Yeah. So if anyone's still confused, I'll give you a simple example. Like Greg said, you may have interest payments of $15,000 a year, and for every one of those payments, you take money out of your bank account and you hand it to your bank, and it's gone. Right? And that is a simple deduction against your rental income. Depreciation, and why we call it a non-cash deduction, is that could also be worth $15,000, but you don't pay a cent for it because you've already bought the property, and you're getting that as a deduction against any rental income. And if you've already deducted the entire amount of rental income, you can offset it against some of your wages and salary income, which is what was called negative gearing. So it is one of the biggest and perhaps most misunderstood or most underutilized non-cash deductions when it comes to property investment. I think the other big thing to think about when it comes to depreciation is, I think it was probably 3-4 years ago, the government changed the rules, and depreciation is somewhat limited when it comes to a second-hand property. to own the items that you've purchased as the owner. So, that's why we're always big believers in buying brand new. You can turbocharge that. So, like for like, if you're buying a $500,000 home that is secondhand and a $500,000 home that's brand new, the depreciation might only be $3,000 or $4,000 on a secondhand home, but it could be, up to $15,000 on a new home. So, that's definitely something to think about. But, tax time, that is one of the biggest incentives that you can ever get. It doesn't cost you a cent either, and it is open to everyone. It doesn't matter, where you live or, whether you're a foreign resident for tax purposes or you're local here. Everyone is able to claim depreciation, so it's a fantastic one. Greg, anything else on tax time, or should we?
No, I think also people, a lot of people.
I'm not getting a lot of questions. That's why I asked. It doesn't seem like anyone's interested in.
That's all very good. Because often we talk to investors, and they as developers, we always try and design buildings that we keep the owner's corporation fees as low as possible. But what people got to realize is that any OC fees that they pay are tax deductible. So when they get excited, it's not money just going away. They get that back from the government anyway. So effectively, it's yes, obviously try and keep it low, but that is a very important side of things, that the OC fees, agents fees, land taxes, all these different things you can deduct them against your income tax, and thus therefore it's not just an out-of-pocket expense. You do get the benefit of it.
Yeah, great advice there. So for anyone who's still confused and wants to know a bit more, as I said, hang around till the end, and happy to answer any more questions, or we can set up a one-on-one and run through depreciation with you in more detail. All right, let's park that there, since it seems like we put everyone to sleep, because I didn't see any questions coming in as we were starting to talk about that topic. Jack, we talked about a few records just then when you were talking about the level of lending. Again, we saw CoreLogic come up with another record, which is the fastest quarterly growth rate in house prices, or national house prices, in over a decade. Tell us a bit more, break it down. What did we see, and how did it look around the country?
Okay, so I got some figures from the report. Obviously, the report is generated by the IEFV, which is the Real Estate Institute Australian. So the report shows, of course, like James, you already mentioned, that house price increased at the highest quarterly rate in the decade, last 10 years. So we put in the details, like the average median price for the capital city Australian for over the March quarter increased by 6.8% for the house and 2.7% for other residential property. We make that more easy for the people, like we saw the price, and the average housing price, the median price for each capital city for house, it rose to 873,000 for the other residential property, and the increase to the 621,000. So, which is great result. We saw that. Also, I want sharing another things, which is the figures and released from the Knight Frank's Global House Price Index, which shows over the most recent 6 months, Australian housing price have grown by 8.7%, which is the fourth faster rate of growth globally.
Okay. So there you go. We're even making it onto front page news on a global scale, and not just about the fact that Victoria continues just to lock down its residents. Greg would kill me if I didn't mention that, but of course. All right, let's step it up to another gear. I heard Jack just say that the median house price across the country was 870-odd thousand. I think for anyone living in Melbourne, or in particular in Sydney, would find that statistic to be somewhat insulting. As I think, we've talked many a time that I can't even remember how many suburbs there are that median house price is more than $1 million in both those states. But in particular in Sydney, house prices are totally out of control. So has anyone sort of got some stats specifically about Sydney and their sort of median house prices, and how does that compare to the rest of Australia? And then everyone that's on the line, if you've got any questions about that, throw them in now so they're at the top, and I'll hit the guys up.
What's actually happened, James, is that Sydney's actually reached a record. It's gone completely out of control. It's now sitting at about 1.2 million.
Okay.
So that is.
So hence why I said it was a bit insulting to hit that. So that nationally, it's 870, but for all those people looking to buy or that have bought in Sydney, that median is another almost what's that?
What is
another 50% more?
That's insane. And then if you look at it as well, the apartment side of things is also increasing as well. It's just short of 800,000. This is basically in Sydney.
Yeah.
Picking up on the point that you were talking about, that Melbourne is literally, because of our wonderful, as you said, lockdowns and stuff over here, we're probably about 6 months behind.
Yep.
So we probably will eventually catch that up. There's a good chance that we could catch up. So it's a good time to actually, again, housing affordability is crazy, but looking at units, again, shamelessly giving us a punt, but getting a unit now is a good chance that median price and that increase will catch up with will get close to or catch up with Sydney. So it's a good time just to get into units.
I think that is always one of those factors that Sydney and Melbourne have always accounted for pretty much half of the entire country's population, and I think it's always been interesting to me when you've looked at sort of the gap in house prices, and they come closer together and they spread out and they come closer together. But ultimately, whilst there's a raging debate always between people that live in Melbourne versus people that live in Sydney as to where is the better place to live, there really shouldn't be that big a gap. So I think definitely, Sydney house prices are a good 6, if not 12 months ahead of where Melbourne house prices are.
Wow.
So I think that's why many people are still sort of saying Melbourne's still got a fair bit of puff left to go, because it's got a lot of catching up to do.
Yep,
and I think that's what you were talking about there, Greg, that seeing that gap in median house prices, it's ridiculously big, the gap at the moment, that it's probably not normal.
Yep.
All right, look, it's the top of the hour. So since no one was interested in Greg's topic about tax time, let's call it the session there. We will hang around at the end. So those of you that fell asleep while Greg was talking, but actually would like to ask some questions, we'll hang around. So as I said, 2021 has been an interesting year. We've seen records being broken, month after month, quarter after quarter, in terms of auction clearance rates, demand, limited supply, house price growth, new loans growth. Everything is out there, and everything is pointing to we're in definitely well into the upward cycle in terms of house prices. So what should you be doing? You've heard us talk about it a lot. A lot of questions were asked, but what should you be doing now? Well, the first and the easiest thing is you do nothing. Now, for a lot of you, that will be the answer. I just want to caution you that if you don't make any changes, then don't expect things to be different, okay? So if you're happy with the way things are, then that could be a perfectly acceptable next step for you to do nothing. But if you want things to change, then don't fear the change. Fear not making that change. What is it going to cost you? What are you going to miss out on? Because if you don't make a change, nothing is going to change for you. The second option you've got is to take on board what we've talked about today. Think about how it might affect you. In particular, as we said, that actionable knowledge database is the key, takeaway. If there's one thing that you remember, is that, and how to build that up so you can go out and do it yourself. We've told you the framework, we've run through it, you can see what we're doing and breaking down. But what I really, really hope you do is you join us and you let us help you, and we do it together. What are some of the most successful investors around the world do? They all find the right team and they work together, because it's not about that they can't do it themselves. It's about how do they fast track the journey to their end goal, and they find the right people to work together and do it. So we would love to be part of your team. We think would be a great addition, just as I know Greg, who goes for the Mighty Bombers, is always saying he'd love to have Dusty Martin join his team. He would be with welcome in there with open arms. We'd love to be part of your team, and we think we can do just as good a job as Dusty if you invite us in. So how do you do that? How can we help you? Well, perhaps the most active and dedicated way is to catch up one-on-one. So I said at the start of this session that I would have an opportunity for you to get involved. This is it. So I've thought long and hard about it. We've been doing this for the last 6 months and it's worked really, really well. Is I've fixed time in everyone's diaries that the only time that they can be booked out is for one of these sessions. So what we've done is we've pretty much worked out it's about a 15, 20-minute get-together. We can do it in person. We can do it on the phone. We can do it on FaceTime. We can do it on Zoom, however you best prefer. Typically, one of these meetings, we'll have a quick chat about you, the market, what are you thinking about, where have you been, where are you hoping to go, what have been the challenges, in terms of trying to get where you are. And really the idea is just to see if you will be a right fit for us. And likewise, you can get a better feel for us. It's great to have that one-on-one time. It's probably the lowest investment of time that you can possibly make, and it's still expect to get a real and genuine actionable result. So, who is it for? Well, it's pretty simple. We're looking for people that want to move forward, want to get involved, want to actually take those next steps. So, you've got to be able to understand the concepts we've talked about. You've got to be prepared to put in the hard work. You've got to be able to roll your sleeves up, get involved, and, take action. Because as I always say, those of you that can look back, say, 10 years ago and just think, geez, I should have brought that. I should have done that. I shoulda. And guess what? You didn't. So, you need to be able to take that action. So in the next 10 years, you're not looking back and saying, gee, I wish I had have done that. So that's who it's for. If that sounds like you, then jump on now, because I truly, honestly believe that this is the best next step for you to move further on your journey. All right, so how do you do it? You've probably been saying, yeah. All right, how do I book? Really, really simple, 3 ways. Jump into the chat. You'll see Greg's posted the link there. You can go in, book one of those sessions straight away. Have a look when you joined us on Zoom. Obviously, if you're on Facebook, none of these options will work for you. So you'll need to join us live in order to get this opportunity. Your web browser should have been redirected to the booking page. Thank you, guys. I can see a few notifications coming through at the bottom of my screen already. Or lastly, if you don't have your diary or you're not quite sure as to what time, or you've got to go away and check, we'll send you a follow-up email after this session with a link so that you can book those times. So look, that finishes the formalities. I think I've kept it to within less than 10 minutes over. So from me and everyone on the panel, thank you very much for dedicating your time this afternoon. I know there is a lot of other things you could be doing, so we really, really do appreciate it, and we hope that we added value. So those of you that have got to go, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you again next week, next month, or next quarter. Here, question time, 2:30 p.m. every single Wednesday. All right, so guys, we will just hang around a minute or two and just see if anyone's got questions. In particular, if they want to tax Greg on taxation questions, feel free to do that. Or, Lucas didn't give us any tips, so feel free to demand some from him.
Okay, thank goodness. I've been waiting for a long time. First of all, okay, a couple of things. First of all, when it comes to tax, one of the important things that you didn't mention is that all those credits, if you don't happen to use them in 1 year, they do accumulate to the next year and then to the next year. So that's also very important to know, that you don't lose those credits, even if you don't use them in 1 year. I think a lot of people don't realize that. And it's always, it's a very good point. And we've got time for a story.
Give us a story. Come on.
Okay. So I read this amazing article. Now, this is really good. This guy had a business for 30 years. Due to COVID and everything, had to shut the business down. So he ended up selling one of his investment property, his only investment property he had. And it sold for $910,000 above reserve price. In under 10 years, his property more than doubled And now he says, I don't have to worry anymore, open up my business or anything. Now, if this guy 10 years ago didn't have the courage or knowledge, like you mentioned earlier, to invest in a property, he wouldn't be in the position he is today, because, you know, businesses can thrive one day, but tomorrow they might not be here. So he was intelligent enough to invest his money, and today he solved his financial worries forever.
There you go. So what you should do, jump in a time machine, go back 10 years and buy that property, and you'll have doubled it. Unfortunately, if you're not
speak
like
with
Elon
Lucas.
Musk and you don't have the ability to go to space, then buy it today.
Or speak with us.
Yes, exactly. All right. I'm not seeing any more questions. So guys on the panel, appreciate you guys hanging around and all the great content you gave everyone. So those of you that are still on the line, hopefully we've woken you up. I hope that you'll join us again next week or next month. So from all of us, bye for now, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.